One last topic I want to hit today. This is just an amazing thing going on. And you're going to hear this expression, no blue state bailout. I put in no blue state virus bailout, but I want to make something clear. And by the way, we're going to talk tomorrow on the show with Congressman Chip Roy, who is, among many things he's been talking about in this coronavirus crisis era. He's been talking about the federal spending and whether or not we ought to be bailing out the states. So I want to just break down some pieces of that to make something clear. One challenge we already have, as you know, we've had bills out of Congress. We have just been forking out money like a drunken sailor all over this country. Democrats sticking in the coronavirus relief packages, things like money. Everyone points out the money that went to the Kennedy Center, but all sorts of places. We have been spending money like crazy. There's another bill pending. They're going to again be bailing out more people. But a really unique and important issue is whether or not the federal government should be on the hook, should respond to the states that are asking, the state themselves saying they need a bailout from the government. They need the federal government to give their states bailouts. One piece to keep in mind is that many blue states in this country, Democrat-controlled states, spend like drunken sailors all the time. They have pension funds that are, meaning they had state workers who put their time in, who worked and either are still working or are retired, who are owed money out of their pension funds. And the pension funds simply are insufficient. This has nothing to do with coronavirus. Long before the virus came along, you had pension funds that simply could not meet the obligation the state had made to individual workers. So you had, they call them unfunded liabilities of these pensions. So we had the big, the typical big blue states. We had the largest unfunded liabilities in California, Illinois, New Jersey, New York. So these states are saying, now that we're all in this really big financial crisis because of the coronavirus, we need to have a federal government bailout, and the big states are asking for big money to be bailed out, sent to them from the federal government as a bailout, and they're using it for and talking about, we have these huge problems. We have big budget problems. So where we are, and that before I get to what my argument about this, for all 50 states, all tallied together, 50 states, we have nearly $5 trillion in unfunded pension liability for government employees. The bulk of that is in big blue states. So the question is, as we're beginning to make any decision, any thought about whether or not we're going to have the federal government bail out unfunded pension liabilities in the states, we have to keep in mind the federal government is also broke. They don't really have any money. It's silly to claim they have money. They are, our federal government is in debt. We have a huge deficit every year. We have a debt. We just added to our debt. They don't really have money to be doling out as though they have it tucked in some savings account. But with respect to the unfunded liabilities, some states, for pension funds, some states are saying, we might actually run out of money. We might actually go broke. One idea being floated in Washington is, okay, state of New York, go ahead. Go into bankruptcy. Let the state itself go into bankruptcy, because once you go in bankruptcy, supposedly all your debts are sorted out. But it's also true that when you go in bankruptcy and the debts are sorted out, that the state has debts to various things, in some of the pension funds, there's a provision that says even if this state happens to go into bankruptcy, no pension liability can be touched. So here's our dilemma. How, number one, if at all, should the federal government be helping the states with unfunded pension liability? My answer is zero. Zip, zero, nada. There's no way to stop the behavior of leftist blue state governors and officials if you simply bail them out. They will continue to create unfunded liabilities. They will continue to build pension fund liabilities because in the back of their head, it's okay, well, eventually, if we don't have the money, the government's going to have to step in. The federal government's going to help us out. We have to break that pattern. We as a country, our whole country, we have to break that pattern of states continuing to create liability for the state to unfunded pension liability for people. I'll give you just one example of how extreme it is. They have committed, some of these states have committed, handing out massive pension benefits that in some cases pay $100,000 more per year to former government workers than is paid by contrast for similar workers in the private sector. So we have pension liability as one issue, and the coronavirus, forget about that for a minute. Just the pension liability, I think it's time for this country facing just massive, calamitous, ridiculous crushing of our economy. Money because of the shutdown, money coming from Washington is just funny money. You might as well just break out the Monopoly game. It doesn't, we're just printing money that has no actual economic meaning, fiscal meaning. But it probably is time for the federal government to say, you know what, states, you're going to have to deal with this yourself. So moving forward, you're going to have to radically change the pension deals you cut with the government unions. That's your problem. That's on you. And for where we are right now, you states, you're going to have to sort it out. So maybe you're going to have cut funding for other things, cut spending in other areas. Maybe you're going to have to go to your citizens and say, hey, citizens, who, by the way, citizens' taxes already paid the government employees. The citizens' taxes are going to be used to pay the pension fund liability. So for the government of those states to have to say, you know what, at the end of the day, we have to solve this. So we're going to have to ask everyone to take a little break, to take a little cut, to be part of solving this. This is part of what needs to happen in those states instead of the federal government bailing them out. But now turn talking about the coronavirus. Because the coronavirus resulted in the national shutdown, you have cities, towns, counties, states, municipalities of all kinds with drastically reduced funds available because of the shutdown, because nobody's shopping, nobody's paying sales tax, nobody's getting a paycheck, no one's spending money. Our national spending is way down. So all those entities that survive by collecting taxes are going to have less money. And the states who continue to be more egregious, more on the shutdown, pushing the shutdown to stay longer, saying not permitting what we used to think of as just the basic right to run a business, like a nail salon, a hair salon, or a restaurant, whatever your business was, that used to be assumed to be your right as a free citizen. That right has been taken away by the states. The states need to own. They need to take responsibility for the fact they shut the businesses down. They have less tax revenue. They have to cut spending. There is no reason the federal government should agree to be on the hook for the damage done to the states in terms of reduced tax income because of the shutdowns, especially in the blue states where the shutdowns have become more and more egregious. The blue states pushing them longer. California is on lockdown till I don't know when. Those states cannot be thinking, it's okay, we're shut down. It's okay, we're not collecting tax revenue, because at the end of the day, the federal government's going to bail us out. They need to be thinking it's going to all be on them. It's going to all be on Governor Newsom. It's going to all be on the governors in all of these states, including my state, the great state of Texas, Governor Abbott. We are on far too egregious and far too extended lockdown in this state. But there has to be a sense of personal responsibility of the states to say, we got to deal with the mess we're creating. In fact, the states are more likely to give in to the pressure to reopen if they recognize there ain't no money coming from Uncle Sam. This would be a great incentive for all of these local officials so happily, manipulating the power available to them and becoming little tyrants happening all over this country. It would be a wonderful thing if those people realize, you know what, actually, we're going to have to open up because we can't function. What the private sector, what the protesters have been telling them is you need to open back up. When you have states and other local governments thinking in the back of their mind, we can keep the shutdown rolling because Uncle Sam will help us out, they don't have the incentive they need to have to reopen the economy. If they realize there's no help coming from Washington, they got people who want to work, then it's an entirely different equation for them to say, we're going to have to let things open up. I want to, even President Trump, by the way, went ahead and talked about the idea that the blue state coronavirus bailouts are unfair to Republicans. It really is true. The blue state bailouts that we may be doing, we're talking about doing from Washington. Oh, the other aspect of blue state bailout, or it's not a bailout, but it's a change that Nancy Pelosi is trying to push, the Speaker of the House, Democrat Speaker of the House. She's been saying, well, this is a time, given all the other challenges these poor Americans have, let's go ahead in the next spending bill and take back the changes in law we did. They call it the SALT tax, the state and local tax deduction limit. And very quickly, all that is that in a brilliant stroke of conservatism, the federal government decided when you pay your federal taxes, you used to be able to deduct, when you pay your federal taxes, you had a deduction for your entire state tax liability. But this resulted in big government blue state citizens having a much bigger deduction taken out of their federal taxes because they paid those taxes to the state than people who live in red states that are more fiscally responsible. So the change in federal law is to say, you know what, we're just going to put a cap. Above X, you can't deduct any more than X. So even if your state charges you taxes that are more higher than X, that would be your problem, citizen. If you don't like this, press your government, your state government, to reduce taxes. All getting around to saying this coronavirus, which has been really, just the most amazing episode in American history, episode in terms of healthcare, but far more, it has raised many issues and inspired people to really think about what freedom means, to think about why does government get to control what I do, and how much should the federal government be on the hook for decisions state governments are making. It's a great opportunity for conservatives to speak up and say, you know what, we want to go back to work. We want our state to let us go back to work. And when the state figures out they've got no more money coming from D.C., they're going to let us go back to work. Those lessons are doubly, triply needed in the big blue states, California being a big one, New York, New Jersey, where the message has to be to those Democrat governors, you're going to own all the damage from the shutdown that you're causing. You're going to economically own it. And I'm going to wrap up today's show by saying this before I get to why it matters to you. But I have been, didn't happen to support Donald Trump in the primary. I have been, since he came along, became our president, have been so grateful for his leadership, so grateful for his strength, so grateful for his agenda, so grateful for his ability to fight against what many Republicans saw for decades. They saw Republicans in Washington capitulating to the left, capitulating to Democrats, and growing government and growing spending, and essentially capitulating to the leftist agenda. So it was really, really a breath of fresh air for millions of Republicans to have Donald Trump come along and be a guy who doesn't get pushed around by the left, doesn't get pushed around by the media, doesn't get pushed around by all the name calling the media engaged in. So he's done great things in his presidency. He got us out of the Iranian nuclear deal, terrible deal. We're funding Iran's terrorism. Got us out of the climate change foolishness, the Paris Accords. He has been pushing the bizarre notion that because we're a country, we should have an enforceable border. He has withstood the slings and arrows of the left on so many issues and saying, no, we're going to have a border. We're going to enforce the border. We're not going to let caravans just overrun our borders and say, okay, come on, everybody. President Trump, has stood strong on issue after issue after issue after issue. He has been a fabulous advocate for conservative ideas. He's been brilliant on religious freedom, brilliant on standing up for the rights of religious Americans. He's just been great on so many issues. The Trump agenda is a home run, pro-America agenda. The bringing back of jobs here, the rates we had before coronavirus came along, the unemployment rates being so low, we had taxes cut, we had business booming, we had everything going well. This coronavirus has been the biggest single challenge of his presidency. the biggest. It is an effort, not the virus, but the reaction to the virus has been an effort to undermine him. The Democrat media mob uses everything about the virus as a way to attack President Trump. This is a crucial time we're in right now, a crucial time. We have elections in November. I think there are millions of Americans who supported President Trump, cheered him on, understood he was being attacked falsely in the Mueller Russia-Trump collusion witch hunt, understood he was being attacked for doing nothing at all wrong in the Ukrainian attempt to impeach him in the Ukrainian deal. But this has been the hardest issue of his presidency because he does feel the idea of needing to help the American people stay safe from a virus. He does want to do that. He also wants to bring back our economy. He took some uninformed advice, bad advice at the beginning of the coronavirus episode when he had the really bad models that came out of England and other places that told him that we had an impending catastrophic pandemic on our hands unless he moved rapidly and really shut down pretty much all of America, which is what happened. We're past that pandemic phase. We're past the shock phase because we now understand that we were grotesquely misinformed about the lethality and the infection rate, and all the data we now have is showing a very different picture. It is really time for the Trump administration to turn the corner and say, okay, we shut down because we got bad information, try to protect America, but we have to fight to protect the American economy because the American economy is the difference between prosperity and poverty. It's the difference between freedom and repression. The American economy, the right of people to work, to earn wages, to bring them home, to put food on the table for their kids. This is as American as July 4th and apple pie. And I think the Trump administration is beginning to see this. We can't stay in pandemic mode forever. We can't stay in panic mode. We've got to turn the corner. I'm very hopeful that Vice President Pence's comment this morning that they're already in talks to disband or dissolve the coronavirus task force, which Vice President Pence headed up. This is a good sign to me. It's a sign that he's recognizing we've got to turn the corner on this. We have to get back to getting the country working. We have to push out entirely to the states the responsibility for the policies they put in place. And then we have to eventually put pressure on those governors to say, ain't no bailout coming from D.C., governors. You're going to have to fix this. You're going to have to get your people back to work. I'm hopeful that's not the course that we were on because it was a very rough patch for the Trump presidency, and there have been many of them. But I am hopeful on today's broadcast, where we are now, I'm thinking that in Washington, they're starting to see we cannot stay stuck on the bad policies we created based on the bad data we got. We can move forward. And that is really the message we need to be getting out to America. It's time to move forward. It's time to let free people live. It's time to get this country back to work.